or not, but here goes nothing.
Oh, mine.
That's
Right.
gonna be
Hello,
fun.
everyone.
Hello.
All right,
Hello.
we are live.
Okay.
Welcome to the 6th episode of the Booktube Live Shows. I'm back after taking a week hiatus. I just started my first week back from college classes, so I'm excited now to have some new lovely guests joining me. If you want to introduce yourselves with your name, your channel name, your Hogwarts house, and what books you're currently reading. I know that's a lot, but I think it's a good way for people to get to know you. So
Alright.
Natalia, do you want to start and sort of go like in a circle?
Yeah, I can do that. So my name is Natalia, and my YouTube channel is Books Build Life. My Hogwarts house is Hufflepuff, and I'm currently reading The Beauty of Your Face by Sahar Mustafa and Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Besterrica. And yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Fun.
So I'm Kayla. My channel name is Reading Cloud. I think I'm a Hufflepuff. I haven't taken it in a while, so I don't know. Maybe. I'm also reading The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, as well as The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman.
Ooh.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, so I'm having some good reads this month.
Yeah.
Okay, my turn. So I'm Sasha from The Wild Sasha. I'm a Slytherin, as you can see from behind me. What I'm currently reading, I'm in the middle of 5 books, I think, but the one that I remember now is The Girl Who Drank the Moon, which is a middle grade fantasy. And I'm also reading Blood Hair, so a retelling of Anastasia. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Fun. Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Gabby. This is my channel, Gabby YA Books. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am a Hufflepuff. And as for what I'm currently reading, I'm about to start my reread of Fangirl because I knew that I wanted to read that book going into my freshman year of college. So I'm going to be starting that soon. And then I'm making my way through some of the short stories that Cassandra Clare has written for her Shadowhunter Chronicles because there was a few that I wanted to reread. So I'm going to work through some of those as well. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. I have a little ticker that is scrolling on the screen for Anderson's Bookshop, which is my local indie bookstore. They recently posted a GoFundMe, and so I thought it would be nice to put that here and share it. That indie bookstore is one of my favorite indie bookstores. I've gone to so many literary events there. And obviously, a lot of independent bookstores are struggling to get by with being closed down and having significantly less business than normal. So if you are able to donate, I would really, really appreciate it. I'm going to be making a donation. If you have an indie bookstore near you that needs support, donate to them because it's really, really important to keep those companies running because we need them and they're just so, so helpful and such an important part of our community. So please make sure that you're supporting them in this time. And then I guess to sort of introduce the first thing that we're going to be doing is the Unpopular Opinions book tag. And so I have the tag linked down below in the description if you want to check it out and do it for yourself. But essentially in this live show, we're going to be talking about our favorite books, our least favorite books, what makes a book good for us, what makes a book bad. And so I figured this would be a good tag to do to sort of talk about our bookish preferences and open everything up. So I guess the best way to do this is I'll start by reading the question and we can sort of go into a circle as we just did, sort of answering everything and discussing as we go and move from question to question. And being the host, I'll be the last person to answer. So I can hear all of your thoughts before I give my own input. So are you all down to just dive right on in and get started?
Yeah, definitely. Let's go for it.
Awesome.
If you see me dancing, that's just me. All right.
Yes. All right. So question number 1 is a book or a series that you did not like. So I feel like we're starting out relatively simple.
So a popular book that I did not like was Wilder Girls by Rory Power. Don't kill me. So I just, I feel like it queer baited me a little bit because it was promoted so much as a queer YA, but I didn't really get that much. It was kind of like just passed over, and it ended in such a way that I'm still mad at it. It was kind of like we're in the middle of a movie, boom, and that's it. That was the end of the book, and I'm a very end of the book kind of reviewer, so it left me with a really bad taste.
Get that, yeah. I felt the same.
Yeah, I didn't end up finishing that book, so I totally understand that.
I
Okay,
have not read it, but yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kayla. No, go ahead,
Okay,
Kayla.
as for the book, this is going to be controversial, but Again But Better by Christine Riccio.
Okay.
I
I
haven't
don't
read
know
that
that one. Yeah.
Okay, you guys probably know her. She's a pretty
Yeah.
famous booktuber, but
Yeah.
I read her book and there is a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
The writing is not great. The plot is okay. I don't think the characters were very good. Just there was, I think, like I said, there's a lot of room for improvement, and I'm understanding it's her first book. So I think she has great ideas, but they just weren't executed well, if that makes sense.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of the book I didn't like.
Okay.
Wow,
We'll have
you
more
only
on that
managed to
later.
pick one.
But yeah, go ahead, Sasha.
I have so many answers, actually. That's
Go
so
for
bad.
it.
Okay, so I have so many series. For instance, Throne of Glass, The Mortal Instruments, Hunger Games, Nevernight, and Caraval.
Oh wow.
I
Oh,
did
no,
like.
Calling out some of my favorites.
Seriously, I like Throne of Glass. I was bored. I hated every single character. Like I've read the first one, hated it. Read what's the name of the sequel? Crown of Midnight, hated it. The third one, I DNF'd. Like I couldn't handle the characters anymore. I know it's so bad. I wanted to love that series so bad, but I hated it. I don't know why. But and Nevernight, actually, I think I have a problem with Assassins because she made me think of the one in Throne of Glass, and I think I just have an issue with Assassins. Yeah,
That's fair.
It sounds like you gave it a good try, though. So I mean, definitely proud of you for that.
thank you. Like the Mortal Instruments series, I've read the 3 first books, and then I've read the 2 first books of the Infernal Devices. Didn't like any of those, and I wanted to, but
Yeah.
I tried.
I really do want to hear your
No, I
Caraval
understand.
opinion, though.
The thing is that I love fictions, I love fantasy because I want to be in another world kind of thing. But the fact that I knew it was fake, that she was in a fake game, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's valid. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I see it. Like the whole book wasn't fantasy, so you knew she was going back and forth. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. My answer for this is probably going to be one that I don't know if you guys have read this one, but it was one that was really, really popular on BookTube was going around. 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Oh,
Haven't
yeah.
read
you
that one.
Okay.
That was
I-
everywhere.
It was everywhere, and so that was one of the reasons why I read it. I read it during a book slump, so that was probably another reason why I was like busy in my senior year of high school, getting close to like graduating, and so I picked the book up because I was like, this is something everyone's been reading. Maybe I'll like it, and I just like wasn't a big fan of like the characters and everything that was going on like in the story. I feel like maybe if I reread it in a few years, maybe I would enjoy it more. Maybe it just wasn't like directed at me yet, and like my like demographic. And I think like if I get older, I have more years of experience, more life experience, maybe it'll be something that I'll appreciate more.
Yeah.
But for me, like I feel like I wasn't too much of a fan. And so that's another reason why I haven't read Daisy Jones and the Six, because it's by the same author. And I was just like, I'm not gonna like read this book if there's a chance that I'm not gonna like it, even if like everyone and their mother on BookTube and like the BookTube community was talking about it.
Yeah. I actually read Daisy Jones and the Six, and I wasn't a fan of it, you know, coming out there for that one too.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just can't get into her writing maybe, so I've stayed away from her other novel as well. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm just really bad with overhyped books too. Like I don't know if it's the
Yeah.
fact that people overhype them or just in general they're not the kind of books I'm interested in. But I've just steered away from that because it always ends bad for me.
Yeah. I feel that. Right. So for Ready to move on to question 2, that's a book everyone hates that you love.
Okay, well, I have 2. One is kind of older and one is relatively new. Sasha's gonna know. So a book that I love, but that everybody else seems to hate. So Caraval, even though a lot of people love it, there is a huge amount of people who actually hate that book. Even people I follow, which is kind of hilarious. And Twilight, obviously, So like my 15-year-old self was definitely in love with Twilight. Am I gonna reread it to see the problematic stuff? I'm not. But what was I gonna say? So yeah, I love both of them. I don't know. I understand Sasha's point from that it's not fantasy. I kind of like those where like the world is part of the story kind of thing, and I really liked how she did her world in there. I definitely didn't like the whole series, though. I'd like to point that out. I absolutely hated book 2. Book 2 can go in the trash. I don't want it. It was basically book 1 and 3, and 3 was amazing. So if I had to pick one, it was definitely Finale and not Caraval. But yeah, that's the series that I love that people seem to hate.
Yeah. The only one I can think of right now is The Road by Cormac McCarthy. I know it's not as a popular book on Booktube. It's a bit older. What people seem to hate about it is that it's very redundant. It's very slow. There's a lot of character building. So I guess what people don't like about it is those things, obviously. But what I liked about it was that it's very raw and emotional because it's from the point of view of a father and his son in an apocalypse. And it's just, I think it's absolutely beautiful, but I get why people wouldn't like it. So that's my choice.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead with your answer, Sasha?
Oh yeah, sorry. I have 2 answers to that. And actually to find the answers, I asked around me. So I tweeted some people to find The Ocean at the End of the Lane and Coraline by Neil Gaiman. I love those books so much, but so many people hated it. Ocean at the End of the Lane because they were like, I didn't get it. There is an ocean that's not an ocean. It doesn't make sense. And I'm like, yeah, but that's the point. And then Coraline, yeah, but in Coraline, that's because it was creepy, but in a childish way, and they didn't understand the point of it. I don't know. I honestly cannot see why you wouldn't love these books. So, yeah.
I'll raise my hand to not liking The Ocean at the End of the Lane.
A lot of people don't like Neil Gaiman, actually.
I don't like Neil Gaiman. I've tried at least 3 of his books, and I just cannot with his writing style. So, but that's what you try. Personally.
That's the important thing.
That is true.
Okay. Yeah. So for my answer, I want to explain it a little bit. But you brought up Again But Better. That was my answer for this question. And also like Zenith, specifically like talking about these books, there's been so much controversy surrounding them on BookTube where there's people that like really, really hated it. And then there's a whole thing where it's like other booktubers who are friends with these booktubers that wrote these books are like giving this book like good reviews just because they're friends with them, like all of this drama and stuff that happened. And like for me, I understand why these books aren't good and why people don't like them. And I acknowledge that they may not be that great. For me, particularly with Again But Better, I read that book really close to my high school graduation going into college. So I felt for me, it was like a good thing to read with like travel abroad and like learning to get more outside of your comfort zone. And I think that was something that I needed to read. So it's also just like the demographic, like who is the book targeted at and who is going to get the most out of it. And I think a lot of the people reading it, maybe like they weren't necessarily the audience for that book, but I feel like there was a lot of like unnecessary hate directed at those books where it was like, because these creators are really famous and they're going to have a publishing deal because they have like an audience, their book like isn't actually good. Like a lot of things I saw, I just felt like people were coming at these authors just like to hate them. And I feel like it felt like there was a lot of like intense negative opinions surrounding it. Like, I think it's one thing to not like the book and to sort of go through and explain why, but I think there was a lot of like very intense negative reactions surrounding those books that I feel like as a community we could be better about like being less aggressive. And yeah, I don't know. That was just like my take. That's probably like relatively unpopular, but I don't know.
No, I haven't read it.
Opinion. Yeah. Like, she's not a bad author. She's not a bad person because she wrote a book that wasn't great. It's just there's improvement, like I was saying before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I haven't read it, but I did see what Gabby was mentioning like online.
Yeah.
And in a way you're right. Like, yeah, the book, like how we always say when we review books, yeah, you review the book for what it is. You don't have to attack the author themselves. And I did see that a lot of people were like, oh, she just got a deal because she was BookTube famous or whatever. which is kind of
And I
unfair.
feel like it doesn't work that way because I'm
Yeah.
like, most publishing houses aren't gonna, like, yes, they may give someone a deal because they do have some sort of like knowledge that like this will probably sell because there is an audience here, but I feel like they're not gonna like publish a book that they think is bad by any means. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, they're gonna try to publish something that they think is like the best final product.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think some of the criticism there was a little bit unfair, but like, I personally enjoyed reading those books. I thought they were fun. I don't think I like analyzed them as intensely as I would other books because it was more just like fun pleasure reads, and I think it's okay to have those types of books.
Yeah.
So, and I just figured they were like the first answer that I came to for this because I had a hard time thinking of like a genuine series that like a lot of people hate because I tend to like avoid those series just if I'm seeing a lot of, because I'm like I don't know, I'm just like I don't want to, if there's a lot of hate surrounding it, like I don't know, like am I going to enjoy it, am I not, like,
and if you do, can you talk about it?
Yeah, right, absolutely. Okay, moving on to question number 3, if we're all wrapped up here. There could potentially be spoilers, so we'll just put that disclaimer out there depending on how far we decide to get into this discussion. But question number 3 is like an OTP you didn't like, or a certain pairing that maybe happened in a book series that was canon that you didn't like. So we're talking about relationships here and the ones that we didn't like that maybe other people are fans of potentially.
All right, sorry, my mom came in. What was I gonna say? I had mentioned before, I don't necessarily have an answer for this. I've been trying to rack my brain because I've read a lot of books, but I feel like I haven't read really big books that people would be like, oh, this OTP or that OTP. So honestly, I've liked everybody in the books that I've read so far, so I don't really have one that like I didn't agree who they ended up with. I think the only one that I could probably say is Caraval, the second book. I think the other sister ends up with some guy that's not the card guy, which I kind of wanted her to end up with the card guy, even though he was kind of an ass. But but like at the end, he kind of had a character arc that I was digging, and then he just disappeared. So I kind of would have liked the story more if that would have ended up, because it seemed more realistic and there was more chemistry there. But yeah, so I guess that's the only one I have.
That's good.
Yeah. So I have a couple answers for this. The first one I was saying in the chat, which is apparently controversial, is the one for Clockwork Angel, and that is Jem, Tessa, and Will. So the thing I really didn't like about this, which may be surprising, is that I didn't like the pairing of Tessa and Will. I would have liked them all together. I would have liked some polyamory there. And I feel like she does attempt that in a different novel. I'm not going to say who.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like that could have worked very well. Obviously, the one character his life didn't turn out quite how he wanted to. I'm obviously not going to go into too many spoilers here, so I'm going to be very vague. But yeah, I wanted them all together. I thought that would have been such a sweet thing to happen, but I understand why it didn't. So that. And then the other one I want to talk about is in the book I'm currently reading, which is The Final Empire. The two main characters, Vin and Elend. So one of them is king, one of them's like a lowly slave person, kind of. So I feel like this power dynamic isn't great for this. And also, they're just the worst characters. I don't like them as main characters, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people like love them, and I'm just like,
nope.
You both suck. I like the side characters better.
Yep.
So that's kind of my opinion on all this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know, actually, because I can see a love triangle in Hunger Games, which I didn't finish. I can see in Infernal Devices, Throne of Glass, etc. So I really don't know. I try to avoid, like, whenever I read a book and there is some kind of love triangle, I just skip it. I don't know. I don't like that. It doesn't seem like, I don't know, never happened to me. So for me, it's not believable, you know?
And it's very cliche. Like, I feel like it's done a lot. And so it's gotten to the point now where it's like the minute you see a love triangle, you're like, how is this going to go? Because there's some authors that I feel like can do love triangles well, but a lot of times it ends up being really cliche, and that's not fun to read.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to see some polyamorous, as you just said. Like that
Yeah.
would be interesting. I never read anything like that.
Yeah.
Actually,
I got a
players
book
on
for
later
you.
books definitely
Oh.
do that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I personally with love triangles, it's one of those things that I'm like, you either have to make me believe, like I as a reader have to feel like I can't choose between the two. Like when you're giving me the choice, I'm like,
Mm.
how can I possibly choose? That feels like a love triangle. But like if the whole book I feel like somebody's being favored, then I'm just like, okay, well I already know where this is going. So
It
I
feels
think
like a straw man type thing where it's like you're
yeah,
setting it up just to be knocked down because
yeah. So I don't like that.
yeah, that's fair. To defend Will Gem and Tessa because I like love them to pieces. I feel like it takes the later books in the series in order for like everything to sort of flesh itself out. It's so hard to talk about Cassie's books without getting into spoilers, but I feel like it takes time. Like I just feel like because I liked all three of those characters separately, that like I have such a deep, I don't know. And I mean, a lot of people have been talking about Cassie recently being a problematic author because if I was going to get actually into my answer for this question, James and Cordelia, which are like the characters in her most recent release, Chain of Gold, they're like the main pairing of that book series, or at least it seems like it. And I feel like I need more books in order to be able to get on board for that because a lot of people seem like very, very invested in them as a couple. And I think with Cassie and her writing, it takes a while for you to like get invested in those pairings and relationships because they shift so much from like one book to another. So there's that. And then my other answer that I sort of had for this, Little Fires Everywhere, that's a show that's on Hulu now. And the book, I think, came out in 2017. There's two characters that end up together in that book that I like wasn't too much of a fan of. Particularly, I think like the reason why I didn't want this to be my main answer is because I think it's like intentionally written that way. Like you're supposed to not like those characters together and you're supposed to be frustrated that happens. So I felt like it was a bad answer because like you're not supposed to like them. And then I guess with James and Cordelia, like I feel like maybe by the end of the line I may end up liking them. But right now I'm not feeling it because there's so much mess that's happening as is typical like the first books in Cassie's series. So because like you, I tend to get on board with most of the ships that are established in the book because they're usually well written and they're made to be likable. Like they're written so that you like them, you know, which is sometimes a bit of a problem because you want the writing to be more complex. You don't want to sort of have it set up for you right away. But yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Moving on to question 4, which is a popular book genre that you don't reach for that often.
Yeah, so I put a popular book genre I don't normally reach out for is thriller and fantasy. Thrillers just because like I'm not really the kind of person who likes to be scared all the time. I have read The Silent Patient, which I absolutely loved. So there are certain ones I recently read. We Set the Dark on Fire, which is a fantasy and like highly recommend. FF, it's amazing. But normally I don't veer towards fantasy, which a lot of people find interesting because of the info dumping. It's a problem. It's really hard to find a book. And like I recently read, for example, The Sound of Stars, and the world building was spectacularly spread out. And I wish every fantasy book was written like that, where like the details were just put in as you needed them. Because I feel like when the story just dumps it all on me, I kind of, which is like, for example, Once and Future. I absolutely love retellings of King Arthur. Love. And like the amount of queerness in that book was glorious. It was like a rainbow. But like the first like 20 chapters or so are just worlds all the time. And it did take a while to get through it. Like I did end up loving it, but it was kind of like a fight to the top kind of thing.
Yeah. So before I get into my answer, I have to tell you about The Mists of Avalon. Have you heard of this?
No.
Heard of.
It's from the point of view of women, and it's a King Arthur retelling.
Okay.
I would be super interested in it. It's by Marion Zimmer Bradley.
Finding my pen.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. I've written it down. Got it.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, what was the question again? I totally forgot.
It's a book genre you don't reach for that often.
I'd probably say romance. It's definitely not my thing. There's a lot of like romances that are just sprung on you and they're like insta love, and I just hate that. Like, it's so unrealistic. It's just I don't like it. I don't mind it in like fantasy when there's, you know, they have like angsty love, or it's like they're apart for a good reason or something like that.
And there's other things going on too.
Yeah.
It's not just like the focus solely on the romance. There's other stuff going on that it's sort of a subplot.
Yeah, definitely. That's I think that's something I enjoy more. I mean, there's a couple romance genres I like. Like, I don't mind shoujo manga. I am a sucker for shoujo manga. I think it's just so cute and it's well done. It's like really wholesome, but it's also like kind of in your face. Like, it's just overdone and it's meant to be.
Yeah. Noted.
Good. For me, it would be like, for me, romance and contemporary, they go together. I never read contemporary romantic kind of books. I don't know. I need that magic because I read to escape, and I love magical worlds. I love worlds that are not really real kind of thing, and I wish I could be a part of. So yeah, no, romance, just like, I don't know, as you said, like in fantasy, romance kind of parts of it, it's not a problem for me because it's not the main focus, but just about romance or just about like someone's life that could be mine actually without any kind of magic or anything happening, no, I'm easily bored actually.
Yeah. I feel like mine is like a sort of a combination of all of your answers, because I don't really ever read horror books that often, because like I hate horror movies. Like, I feel like it's like I've started reading more like mystery thrillers because I feel like it's something that keeps you guessing, and like that's fun as long as it's like low key. Because if it starts to get really intense, then I'm like, yeah. Like, I read The Woman in the Window by AJ Finn and I really enjoyed that book, but like I don't know if I'd be able to like delve further into that genre. I also I love reading YA contemporaries. I think they're like fun and cute and fluffy, but if we're getting into like solely romance books, like that's where I'm sort of like, not a fan. Because I don't want romance to be the sole focus. I feel like sometimes, at least with YA contemporaries, there's like other stuff going on in them that like the romance isn't the sole focus sometimes. And then I guess like high fantasy too, because the world building, like, and also a lot of times because those high fantasies tend to be series, and so it's like you have to fully invest yourself in that world. And like with a lot of high fantasy series, like I think about Brandon Sanderson, like that world, like I feel like it would just take me so long to get into those series that I like tend to like avoid them for like that reason. So I'm like, I don't have the time, and I feel like with all the world building and everything that happens, it's a lot to take on. And then I haven't read like, I guess I could maybe put this as like mythology, because I haven't read Percy Jackson. I haven't like, I'm thinking about Neil Gaiman, like a lot of people write that, because I had to read the Odyssey, I believe the Iliad and the Odyssey, like my freshman year of high school, and I just like did not have fun with that. I was like, there's so many characters, and I was just like so overwhelmed. I think it was also probably the way that book was taught to me that was not very fun. So, I mean, I try to read like a little bit of everything. Like, I'm not opposed to reading books of all of those genres, but I feel like they have to be really, really well written. There has to be something there to like pull me in, because I probably wouldn't grab for them like on my own.
Yeah, and the Odyssey is not it. That's not a good classic choice.
Right. I mean, I just feel like it was like the first thing that came to mind in terms of like mythology, but I'm like, I should read Percy Jackson because everyone talks about Rick Riordan, and I feel like that could like open up the horizons for me a little bit, because I had a teacher that also taught mythology, and she started to get me a little bit interested in reading mythology, and so I'm tempted. I need to start, and hopefully if I pick good choices, I'll be able to make my way into that genre a little bit.
There's a new one coming out that's pretty nice.
Have you I don't know if one of you have read Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman?
I've read that. I didn't like that.
No, but what I loved is actually at the end of the book, you have all the names of the character and you have their relations, like relationships in between them. And that's useful because in mythology, it's really hard to follow everything. And that's what I loved in that book.
Yeah, there's a new Latinx Cuban Greek kind of thing coming out called New Squad: The Cassandra Curse from Chantal Acevedo, and I'm really looking forward to that because I'm like, ooh, Greek mythology and Cuban Americans, give it to me.
Fun. Okay, so if we're ready to move on to question 5, this is a beloved character that you don't like or you're not a fan of.
Oh.
So what YA characters or just book characters in general are we throwing under the bus?
Apparently I lied because apparently I have 2 unanswered questions. So my answer to this was I don't really read hyped books. So aside from the Caravel series and the Illuminae series, I don't really read a lot of books that other people read often. So I don't really have a beloved character that other people like love that I hate or vice versa. So y'all can take that one with you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who am I going to throw under the bus? I'm going to look at my books real quick.
Like if I think of one, I'll throw it out there. But I'm still
definitely do it. I think I'm going to throw the Divergent series under the bus.
Ooh, okay.
I don't remember the name of the main character.
Triss,
that's it. I do not like her.
Yeah, I had like a walk down memory lane recently where I was like going back and like, because I think for some reason it randomly popped up into my recommended feed. I have no idea why. YouTube's algorithm is weird, but like the reviews for like Insurgent and Allegiant. And so I was like going down memory lane and I was like, oh, the movies were so terrible and they ruined the books for me. And it's so sad because that was like one of the first like main YA series that I've read, and it was big for me because Veronica Roth is from Chicago. I'm from Chicago. She went to Northwestern, which is a college I was originally looking at going to at the time. But yeah, they weren't the best.
Yeah, I think when it came to the last book, that's when I'm not going to give spoilers, but the thing that happened in the last book around the end, I was like,
I think we all know.
What are you doing?
Yeah, I feel like it was like, try to make a gutsy choice to do something different than a lot of like YA dystopian that was going on at the time. And so I kind of respect it, but like, yeah, it wasn't the best.
No, it was just such a pointless thing to happen. I'm just like, but why? You ruined it.
And then Veronica Roth sort of disappeared for a while and came out with Carve the Mark, and then like that all went to hell very quickly. And I feel like she just sort of disappeared.
Reasons, but yeah.
She's had books that have been coming out, and I'm like, I feel like I don't want to read them because I feel like I've moved on. Like I found different authors that I enjoy, and I feel like I'm starting to expand my horizons a little bit more. But there's also a part of me that's like that's where I started, and so it's like it's weird to see her like releasing books now because there was like such a period of time where she just like disappeared.
Yeah,
and hadn't come out with anything. Yeah,
I haven't read Divergent. Like so many books, popular books I haven't read.
Oh yeah,
I don't recommend it. Don't do it.
Yeah, I feel like there's some series where it's like too late. You get to the point where it's like you just grow beyond them, and so even if they're popular and you haven't read them, it's like it's just too late.
Or it's like this book is so 2012, and it's like it's like years later. You're like, it was a different time then.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Mine answer. I cannot remember the name of the main character of Throne of Glass. The girl.
Selena Sardathian.
Yeah, the most annoying ever. Like,
yeah, I feel like lots of people throw Sarah J. Maas's books under the bus, which is why I didn't even bring them up at all because I feel like it's no longer become an unpopular opinion to hate her books. So
I mean, everything
not even gonna bother.
Everything she did in the book didn't make sense. Like she's an assassin, she knows things, she's the best at everything, blah blah blah. One day, so this is not the spoilers. This happened in the book, but one day she's gonna see candies on a bed and she's gonna eat them. I'm like, what if someone is trying to kill you and you're just gonna eat those candies? You know, those kind of details actually made me so angry. Like, didn't make sense. But
I had fun reading the series at first, and then like she has the other series, A Court of Thorns and Roses, and so I read A Court of Mist and Fury, and I was like, okay, I feel like I was just pulled out of it because it is like very intense romance based. Like she will write like 10-page sex scenes, and I'm like, it's okay.
Yeah, but I feel if I had
So-
read the Throne of Glass series like 10 years ago, or even the Mortal Instruments series, I would have loved them. But now, reading them now, after everything else I've read, no. But 10 years ago, yeah, I'm sure, because I can see why people love those series, even if I don't
Right.
now. And growing up with this, like every time someone is like, yeah, I would love to forget that I've read Harry Potter and reread that series, I'm like, no, I love it. I
Yeah.
grew up with it, but I would never forget about them, because reading them now, I'm not sure I would have loved them as much. Like,
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can say that for certain because I've read the first 2 books of Harry Potter last year, and they were pretty bad.
And actually,
yeah.
talking about
So-
Harry Potter, like the 3 first books I read in English, I didn't like them, but I read them in French and I loved them. Totally different. It was just insane. When I saw the difference, when I was able to actually start reading in English, I read them in English because I was curious. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I need to read them in French too because I have some French, but
Ooh.
I don't know. Well, I'll try that out. I'll take your recommendation there.
I
Cool.
thought about my character, but it's pretty quick. I think it would be the other sister in the Caraval series, so not the one that was talked about in the first book, but the one that was talked about in the second book. Okay, so the reason I hated the second book was explicitly because of her. She was so whiny, and like she couldn't get the man that she wanted, and she was always saying her sister was better than her, and I'm like, girl, just own yourself. So that was really annoying, but it's funny because a lot of people found that the second book was better because it focused on her, and I was like, oh hell no.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the character that I definitely do not like.
For mine, I picked one that I feel like is kind of topical at the moment, and I chose the Darkling from the Grisha series by Lee Bardugo because the adaptation is coming out soon. When I read the Grisha series, I went into it with like pretty much a lot of booktube being like, this is not that good. Six of Crows is better. But I also felt like I want to read the world where it started before I read Six of Crows because I'm just that type of person where I'm like, if I'm going to read Six of Crows, like I might as well read the world that it started with just so I like feel like I have a fuller picture and I feel like you have like maybe a little bit more of an appreciation for the world a little bit. But I feel like since the adaptation is coming out, everyone's talking about the Darkling and is like, I feel like there's people that like Shippolina with the Darkling and not with Mal. There's people who don't like Mal as a character. I haven't read the series in also like 4 years, so I was like, this feels like a bit of a non-answer, but it was like the first character I could think of because I just feel like if he's the villain, like you're not supposed to like him. I don't know. I just wasn't a fan when I read that series, and I feel like I'm probably going to be reading it soon at some point because the series is going to be coming out and I want to refresh myself on that world a little bit, or at least like maybe skim through it, kind of give myself enough of a refresher because I don't know if I could reread that entire series again because it was not the best. But yeah, that character is because he's like meant to be more of the villain, and I feel like he's just really, really creepy. I think Ben Barnes is going to do a good job playing him in the adaptation, but yeah, I don't love him as much as everyone else does.
I don't like him.
I've never even read the
he's
series.
good.
I think I'll watch the TV show just because like it's the TV show, but I would never read the series though.
Yeah,
I feel like the problem with the at least the original 3, in my opinion, is that all the characters are one-dimensional.
Yeah.
There's not much character building. There's not too much world building or anything. And then when she went into the duology, there was definitely
a lot more
progression of writing. It got much better. The characters were much better. The world building was better. So I read the original 3, and it took me like months to get through it because it was so bad.
Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah.
Okay. So question 6 is a popular author that you can't get into. So
Oh well, here I am. So a popular author that I can't seem to get into is Sarah J. Maas. The books are huge. Sorry, the books are huge.
No, we're all in agreement here.
Yeah, and the synopsis never calls to me. And it might have to do with the fact that I don't read fantasy, but the only reason I know Sarah J. Maas books is because Read with Cindy is always cracking on them, and I'm always watching their channel and laughing about her reactions. So like that's literally seriously, that's the only way I consume Sarah J. Maas is through her channel. Like,
Yeah.
that's it.
Same.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try to pick on someone different because Sarah J. Maas is the obvious answer, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pick on Stephen King.
Okay.
Oh, recent books or older books?
Probably all his books. I think there's about 2 that I like. The rest are
Like all of them.
bad.
Oh, wow.
For example, I don't like how he writes female characters. I don't
I've
think
heard.
he really knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
That might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but I noticed in It, there was kind of some creepy vibes when he was writing the younger female character.
I somebody
very
pointed that out on Twitter.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm gonna pick on him. But there's one book that I like, and that's Under the Dome. It's one of the best. I believe it's the best thing he's ever written, and I think it's a wonderful book. I own it, and I like give it copies out to people because I love it so much. So, other than that, I've tried other books. I've tried the Dark Tower series. I tried reading it. Other than the fact that that book's huge, it wasn't great.
Those books are ridiculous.
But I tried.
Yeah. I don't read horror, so I haven't tried, but I've heard the
Right.
problematic things in the book.
Yeah,
I love Stephen
hard to
King.
get past, so.
I love his books, but the oldest books, because now he's not into horror anymore. He's more writing about thriller kind of thing, I feel. Like, I just finished The Institute by Stephen King. I'm like, I don't understand what it was. Like, I'm confused. I don't know why, but I love his old books, like horror, heavy horror. But yeah, I can see the female issue in this, but I guess it's sometimes hard to write about female when you are actually male.
Well, I feel like maybe if you talk
When
to
you
his wife and be like, hey, how do you write a
do
female
enough
character,
research
you know?
or
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't
yeah.
know.
But my answer was Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah. I feel like she's the easy choice.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like for me, right? I don't read a lot of hype books, and she's the only one that
Yeah.
I'm like, I for sure know I don't like her books.
Right.
So-
Yeah.
So yeah, I tried to go for a little bit of a different answer, and I was scanning my shelves, and I came up with Holly Black. I feel like she became
Oh yes.
became like Cruel Prince was like a big thing. So I haven't read like that many of her books, but I read The Darkest Part of the Forest, and I was like, this is okay. I read The Cruel Prince, and I got to the ending of it, and I was like I enjoyed it, but then I just never continued on with the rest of her series, like with the rest of the books like in that series. And I feel like I need to, but I also was just like had so many other books, and then it was like I think a few years because I read an arc of The Cruel Prince that I got at BEA in like I think 2017. And so like by the time the next book came out, like it was several years later, and I was like, okay, like am I going to pick up this series now? I'm even going to remember where it left off. And so I feel like I've struggled to get into her books, but if I like sat down and forced myself, I probably would enjoy them. Maybe. But
Keyword: force yourself.
yeah, I feel like I need to do that because I know a lot of people love her books, but then there's also I know people who don't like The Cruel Prince, and so I'm like I don't know. So I thought she was kind of a good answer because I've only read 2 of her books, and
Yeah,
I
I
sort
wasn't
of
interested. Yeah, I haven't been
Nothing.
interested in Holly Black books. It's like The Cruel Prince and Sarah J. Maas's books for me are like on the same level. Like every time I see them go by my timeline, I'm like, I don't see anything that entices me about them. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't like any of Holly Black's popular works. I actually like, there's a series called The Curse Breakers.
Yeah.
Mm,
It's called White. The first one is called White Cat. That's probably the best thing she's ever written. And then, like, when it goes on to The Cruel Prince and stuff, like, I don't know what happened. Like, usually authors get better, but
yeah,
Yeah, like that didn't happen.
yeah,
I don't know what happened.
yeah. Okay. I feel like we touched on the 7th question a little bit, but this is a popular book trope that you're tired of seeing. I feel like we all sort of threw love triangles in
We
as
did.
a potential answer.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we want to talk about that sort of falls under?
I'm
It
trying
is
Love
to
at first sight.
think. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say insta
Insta-love.
love. Just like I mean, personally, like I identify as ace or demisexual. So like for me personally, if I have a book that like, you fall in love right away, because that's not how I associate with
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
I can't relate. So I need, like, even in romance books, which I do enjoy, if the relationship is believable, like if we're going and building through the relationship together, then yeah, I really enjoy it. But if you're just gonna throw that in my face and be like, hey, they're in love, I'm like,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, insta love doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Right.
I have
That's
kind
it.
of a different answer for this. So mine is I'm not like other girls trope.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
one's bad too.
I hate this because you know what? What's so wrong with being like other girls? Why do you gotta throw other girls under the bus?
I don't know.
Why you gotta do that?
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
feel like this is a lot where there's, let's say, Hunger Games, for example. That's very prevalent, and she's kind of different from other girls, and that makes her better than everybody else. And she's like, stop it, just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen it. Where it bothers me the most, I think, is when I see it within the same like cultural reference. Like, for example, if you have a POC book and like this girl is like, oh, I'm better than that girl because I don't hang around with a lot of boys, or like I'm smarter. Like when they like attack their own like race and ethnicity, kind of feels a little bit like that's kind of wrong. So yeah, I don't like it specifically in that context as well. So
I can see that. Yeah.
For mine, for my answer for this, I tried to do something like a little bit different. I was trying to like think outside of the box. I don't know if this is so much of a trope, but I feel like it's something that I see sometimes. And also I think because I was watching Little Fires Everywhere and this was something that sort of happened in it. But you have like the girl who's smart and maybe is like quiet and is like the back of the classroom. Maybe she's like I don't want to necessarily say like she's a teacher's pet character, but she's someone who's like well-rounded, like a good character, a good person. And there's like I guess it could sort of be like a love triangle-esque, like the Mortal Instruments series does this a little bit, where you have like Clary, Jace, and Simon. It's like who she's gonna end up with, like the bad boy sort type of thing,
good
where
girl,
it's
bad
like,
boy trope.
yeah, like the good, yeah, pretty much. Where because I just feel like I like a lot of the bad boys. I'm like, if I'm thinking about this in real life, like those are not the people that I want to like associate myself with.
Nope.
Like whether they be like jocks or people who are just like like a lot of the bad boys tend to like have like misogynist qualities to them, and so it's like the girl like does not like this guy, like maybe she throws shade at him a little bit, and then it's like, oh, he has like some reason or some excuse for like why he does what he does, like some troubled past or something. It just feels really cliche, and I'm like, no, like if we're talking about it in real world situations, like this character would not be likable, and there would be nothing that would like, I don't know, I just can't. Yeah, exactly. I don't.
Yeah, I feel that. It's like, would I date this? And sometimes I'm very literal. I find my stories need to be grounded in reality a little bit. Even my fantasies,
Right.
like I like them best when like I could really see myself in them, like it could be happening in real life. And so
Absolutely.
yeah, that kind of stuff really throws me off in a book, because if I'm like, I would never like that guy, then I'm just like, what's the point? Like, why are you liking him?
And I feel like another issue with this is that it's kind of saying, trauma is an excuse to hurt other people. It's an excuse to be shitty. It's an excuse to do bad things to people because, I've been traumatized. And it's like, it's such a bad message, especially for people who have been traumatized. Because, a lot of the times it's like they're more quiet or they're more closed off or those kinds of things. So this, I just think it can be handled very differently.
Yeah.
Because I'm working on my social work degree, in case you guys didn't know. So, like, I am very well versed in this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Seeing that trope, I don't like it. I think it's very
I don't think it's
demotivating.
popular anymore, which is a good thing, because I feel like YA, or like a lot of popular novels have realized like this is not good, but it feels like a early like 2010s type thing when like dystopians were really big, where it was like, we're gonna just have this jerk character and the good girl who tries to fix them because she's a good influence, and it's like yikes.
Yikes is right. Correct.
Okay. All right, we're getting close to the end. So this is a popular series that you have no interest in reading anytime soon.
No surprise here. Acomath. Honestly, and I'm just gonna say I love retellings, okay? But like
Yeah.
every time I sit down again to read a synopsis of these books, I'm like, this retelling is not calling
It
me.
starts out as a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but I think
Yes,
it's
and then it
not.
like veers off.
Yeah,
And
and like Throne of Glass is meant to be a Cinderella retelling, and I'm like, I don't think you can consider those books retellings. Like, I refuse to. Like,
yeah,
Lunar Chronicles are retellings. Like, I feel like it needs to be obvious if you want to consider it retelling. It has to be
Yeah.
consistent throughout. Like, you don't get to say, oh, it's a retelling in the first book, but then I'm going to do what I want, because I just...
I literally have only consumed those books, again, through Read with Cindy's channel.
Mm.
And it's been great. It's a great experience.
Yeah.
So for this one, I think I'm going to pick on some manga.
Oh.
I'm going to pick on Tokyo Ghoul.
Oh. I've
this
heard
one-
of it. I haven't read
This
it.
one's very popular
Yeah,
and
I've
well
heard of it.
loved. I do realize that, but the problem that I do have with it is that it's very gory. I suck at the gore and the horror stuff.
Mhm.
I have watched some of the show, and I did it with like there's some censorship with it, so it covers up things with shadows, and I still couldn't handle it. So I was like, I tried. And also, another one along this line would be Attack on Titan, which again I know is absolutely devastating and very gory. So I don't know. I really stuck with gore. I know I'm sure they're very good stories, but I don't know. I just can't handle it.
That's so weird
Right.
because maybe I'm used to gory books or whatever, but I mean, Tokyo Ghoul is not gore at all for me. So that's just, I don't know, that's funny.
I don't know. I just can't handle it. I like the fluffy stuff like Uran High School Host Club and like
Fruit
Maze
Basket.
Runner.
Fruit Basket. That's also a
I haven't
manga.
seen
Have
that
you read?
yet. I need to.
That's the cutest one. That's the
Yeah.
cutest one, honestly. Yeah. But yeah. Mine answer will be anything that was overhyped, like The Priory of the Orange Tree or Seven Husbands of Evelyn
yeah.
Hugo, whatever. Whenever there is a book everyone is talking about, I'm so scared to actually pick it up and
Same.
hate it
Right.
or love it or whatever. I don't want to open a book and expect out of it. So
Yes.
The Priory for sure, because even today people are talking about it, etc. So
And
definitely
on
that
top
one.
of that,
and also
it's
because
so
it's huge.
big.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so you're telling me that I need to love it, and then you're telling me that this tome has like 1,000 pages, and on top of that, I'm like, what if I get like a quarter into it and I'm like, this sucks, and now I have this huge book that I don't want.
Right? Exactly.
So no.
Yeah.
But there are other books that are chunky. Like I love the not Throne of Glass, of course. Oh my gosh, George R.R. Martin.
Game of
Oh,
Thrones.
Game of
yeah,
Thrones.
Game of
Oh my
Thrones.
gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Those are also chunky books, but I read them all in no time. But I don't know. Nobody was talking about them actually.
That's
Everyone
true.
was talking about the show,
The show.
but not
Right.
about the book. So I was like, okay, I need to
So I
read the
think
book.
people were intimidated by the books. So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see that.
Yeah, even for the Final Empire or whatever. I feel like if you haven't read the books when they came out, it's hard to after dedicate your time to read an entire series, and it can
Yeah.
be an amazing series. It's just intimidating, like Percy Jackson. How many books are out there already? I haven't read that series, and I'm not saying it's bad or whatever, but it's just scary to start a series that's
And
7
commit.
books, 10 books long. Yeah.
absolutely. Because that's one of the reasons why I haven't read Percy Jackson, because I'm just like I have maybe a little bit of interest in reading them because I feel like so many people talk about them that I feel like it feels like one of those like I feel like Harry Potter falls under this a little bit, like the Hunger Games fall under that a little bit. Like these series that everybody has read that like I feel like are considered like literary like touchstones because like everybody has read them, has had some experience with them. And I feel like Percy Jackson falls under that a little bit. So like I may get to those at some point. But I guess my answer for this question, I pulled out An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir and Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi, both of those series, particularly because like Shatter Me, I know there's a lot of new books coming out recently, and I don't know if people like enjoyed those. And so I was like, okay, now the series is coming back. That is an excuse for me to read them and catch up. And I feel like those are also like fall into those maybe like older dystopian books that came out like a while back that I just don't know if I would be interested in them anymore.
Yeah,
But
I think
I
I
heard-
heard some problematic stuff about one of them. I don't remember which one it was. So something about a
Yeah.
relationship in the book. So I was like, I haven't read them. Now it has problems. I don't want it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
I've
really
heard so many
enjoyed An
things.
Ember in the Ashes, actually.
Okay, interesting.
I can see that being
Because I know a
little
lot of people say
problematic,
it's
but-
really good.
Hmm?
Because I know a lot of people say it's really good, and so there's a part of me that feels like I should read it because I know a lot of people talk about it being good, but I'm just like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to it. Like, I just don't. I feel like I have so many other things that I want to read that I just
Yeah.
feel like those are my priority. Also, I feel like I could say Twilight too, because Twilight was just before me. That I remember when it was like Team Edward and like Team Jacob, but like I was
I'm
just
so
like way
sad
too
that
young
was
to read
before
those
you.
books when they were first happening. So I was like, now I feel like it's too late because everyone
is
like
too
it
late.
just it will not
It
be
is
a
too
thing, you know?
Don't do it. It is too late. I love seeing people's YouTube videos reacting to reading it in real time. Actually, one of my favorite is Snow White Reader because she's actually really enjoying the series and it's cracking me up. But yeah, no, it's one of those things that was definitely ready for you to read it when you were like 14, 15, like dreaming about somebody that loves you with that much like want or whatever. But clearly, definitely not the message we want to be sending now.
Yeah.
It's a very 2008 book. Just
Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
that's why I feel like it's sort of because we talked about that a little bit, like books that are like older, that it's like they've had their prime.
They've had their
and
time.
Now they they don't.
But is
hold
there
up.
a book you really want to read, but for some reason never got to it?
Ooh.
Ooh, that's a valid question. That I really wanted to read.
Yeah.
That I
Mine, for
didn't.
instance, is Name of the Wind. Have you read Name of the Wind?
No.
No.
I really
Yeah.
want to read that series,
was
but
so
never got
good.
to it.
Yeah,
It was so good. I loved
that's
it.
Frederick Rolfes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I feel like that was one of the ones I wanted to get to because aren't they doing an adaptation of it, or have they started it? Have they done?
I think it's in the works. I don't know how far it's gone yet.
Yeah, because
We're
I
still
thought
waiting for the third book, right?
Yeah.
was involved in it, and so that's why I was like, I need to read that.
I don't know. I don't think I have one that like I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I think it was at the time, but I've already read it. It was Illuminate. A lot like I'm not into sci-fi whatsoever. I've been reading more sci-fi though now, and I'm really excited, including a polyamorous one, Sasha. And that's really good. But yeah, so I've been getting into it slowly. But initially, when I read Illuminate, somebody recommended it because I like multiple format books, like when they have other ways of writing.
Mixed media.
Yeah, and I had heard that the audiobooks were full cast, so I was super excited to like listen to that background and read along. And I like absolutely enjoyed it, although I hated the third book. But like, we're not going to talk about it.
Interesting.
I didn't like the third book at all. I was like, first and second
Same.
book, I was like, yeah, I'm here, and then the third book, I was like, what was that?
Yeah, it's interesting because
so-
I just recently I read Illuminate in 2016, and then I got an Arc of Gemina and read that. And then Obsidio came out, I think, in 2018, and I never got around to reading it. And so, because
You
now
don't
that I've
have
been in
to.
quarantine, I just recently finished it. I got the audiobooks for Gemina and
Yeah.
Obsidio because I think from Overdrive, because I wasn't able to get the one for Illuminate because I would have had to have waited like 22 weeks. And I was like, that's fine. I'd rather read Gemina because I read the arc and not the like final copy. So I wanted to like flip through my final copy while listening to the audiobook.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to
literally-
listen to the Lexi Blue song. And so I finished up with Gemina and
I
Obsidio.
bought them. I bought them right after the other because I love them so much. Like I bought Illuminate, finished it, I had the next book in my house like 2 days later, and like progressively. I think I loved how the series wrapped up. That was not my problem. I didn't like the relationship in the third book. Like I couldn't buy into it. I don't know if it's because they didn't delve into them that much. I was definitely more invested in the characters that had come over from the other book. Yeah, and it was a lot shorter than the previous books as well. Like Obsidio wasn't that big. And so I just didn't. But yeah, that was a series that I really enjoyed. It's still one of my top series that I thought I'd missed out on, but I definitely still enjoyed. So
yeah,
I didn't think they were that good.
I've heard that. I've heard that opinion. I've heard that opinion. A lot of people don't like it. Yeah,
I don't know. I wasn't a fan of the characters. I liked the AI the most out of like.
Yes, Aiden is my
fun.
favorite. Oh my god, the perfect example of a morally great character. I love it.
Aiden's fun.
The second one, I got like 10 pages in, and I was like, "Wow, this is awful." So.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it takes a while for Gemina to like happen, and when it does, I feel like it gets
like
fun.
halfway. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
I
going to
agree.
read like
A lot of-
100 pages just for it to start. I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
I
I
feel
feel
like there's
that,
lots of
yeah.
setup that needed to happen before you start to figure things out. And there was things that I forgot when I reread it, and I was like, wait. And so I still had fun rereading it. But like, I feel like I also don't have like a very high standards for what I read. Like, I'm like, as long as you entertain me and it's not too much of a mess, like, because I read for fun. Like, I feel like I could be a lot more critical reader. That's like something that I'm like working on as I start to read more books. But I'm like, if I have fun with it, like,
True.
Yeah.
you know. Okay, but I guess the last question that we have in this tag, which I'm excited to talk about because I love book adaptations, is a book adaptation that you think is better than the actual book?
I sort of have two. One, the movie and the book are at the same exact standard. They were both amazing. And one, I'm guessing the books are better because they have more detail, but the movies were actually an excellent representation of the book. So I'm gonna start with A Walk to Remember, if anybody remembers that
Ooh,
movie
okay,
and the
interesting.
book by Nicholas Sparks. It's a romance, Sasha, so it's not your thing.
That's why.
Yeah. So A Walk to Remember was basically like a story between a boy and a girl, and he was kind of a jerk at the beginning, but he had a great character arc. They found love. Not going to ruin the ending. And so basically the movie was excellent. Like, I mean, I cried throughout the whole book, but I definitely cried throughout the whole movie. It carried the same feeling of innocence and love and growing kind of thing in the movie as well. And so I really think that was really well represented. Still love the movie to this day. Watch it all the time. And then the second one is the Da Vinci Code series. So like I absolutely love the Da Vinci Code series. I've actually read everything Dan Brown has ever written, so like he needs to write some more. And so like the movies, a lot of people don't like the movies. I don't know why, maybe just because like they've never read the book or they just don't think they're deep enough. If you've read the book, the details, like they could have made it a Harry Potter, all right? Like the books have a lot of detail. So you could have made them like two-part movies, but considering that they only had 2 hours, I think they represented the books quite well. And so I really enjoyed seeing them portrayed on screen and like being on edge and the details and the secrets, that kind of stuff. So I think both of those did a good job.
I actually read Origin last year.
So good.
No.
I liked it. So
Not
good.
in my opinion. I thought it was a pretty good thriller, but the thing I didn't like was that there was a couple problematic elements that bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them being a suicide scene, which I thought was not very well done.
Oh, I think I remember it faintly. I
If you
think I
kind
know
of
what you're
remember that,
talking
yeah,
about.
that just made me very uncomfortable and I didn't like it. Anyway, I'll move on to my answer now. So I have two for this. First one is Harry Potter. I love the movies. I did not like the books.
Interesting.
But
I hate a movie
Oh
for
wow.
But like
yeah, I feel like most people
first
don't like Goblet of Fire. I was just talking about that with my friends recently. I was like, Goblet of Fire is a terrible movie.
Yeah.
I hated all the movies.
Like I've heard that the book is like really well fleshed out and the characters are really good and it was like very well
the book
done.
isn't bad.
But I haven't read it, so I can't comment on that.
To be fair, the only reason I read the Harry Potter books was because movie 4 was so awful. And I wanted to know if book 4 was also equally awful. And it was. Because the reason movie 4 was awful is because it was a filler movie. And so was the 4th book. It was a filler book. It had nothing in it except to connect book 3 and 5. So I'm like, you should have just like, So that made the movie horrible. There was nothing to work with. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other answer
also like there's like the directorial choices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone jokes about the long hair and the he said calmly and everything.
Oh yeah, that part's funny. I love it.
Yeah. So there's lots of poor choices that were made that I understand that.
Yeah. All right.
And then the other one I want to talk about is Outlander. So these books are chunky. I think the smallest book is around 700 pages. So I read the first one and I read half of the second one. The books are just very long and drawn out. There's a lot of like info dumping. There's a lot of like unnecessary explanations and descriptions and stuff. So the series is definitely much better because it doesn't bother to do that. It just immerses you in the world and you kind of grow along with the characters. So, yeah.
Yeah. My mom bought it for me, the books, and I barely got through one. It was awful. I was like,
Yeah.
I can't even bother. I haven't bothered to watch the series because I had such a pushing experience with the book. So I'm like, I'm not even gonna go there. But yeah, I can see how the series must have been better. I've heard great things about the series, though.
Yeah, it's really good. The only thing that I'd say about it to anybody is that there's a lot of triggering moments. So just to be like aware of that when you're going in. If you have any problems with like sexual assault or abuse or torture scenes, anything like that, like those things definitely come up. They come up quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it's just something to be aware of.
Yeah. I had also Da Vinci Code, but I watched the movie before reading the book. So that's maybe why. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the book made me want to read the book. The movie made me want to read the book. So I guess that's right. Also, Lord of the Rings. I know it's unpopular opinion. A lot of people didn't like the movies. I absolutely love them. And the third one I had is actually Jurassic Park. I love the movies. One of my favorite movies of all time.
I definitely agree with that one.
Yeah, I love Jurassic Park. When it comes to oh my god, what was the second one that you mentioned, Sasha?
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, so Lord of the Rings, totally agree. So we read The Hobbit for school at the time, and I hated it. I mean, I was like, if somebody can take The Hobbit away from me, that'd be great. But I love the movie. So that was good because just the Lord of the Rings books, number one, they're huge.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can tell by the movies, they go for days. So, but yeah, no, definitely the movies are better elaborated, I think, or better executed than the books were personally. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. It's like the Game of Thrones as well. Like, I love the books. It's really well done, but it's easier to understand the show than the books because of the characters, so many families, so many kingdoms, etc. I found it easier to understand everything through the shows, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I have two for mine. One of them I just sort of thought about. I feel like my first answer is a little bit of a cop-out because it's one of my favorite movies of all time, but The Princess Bride. I love that movie so much because I feel like it's just so quotable and it's fun and whimsical. And there's so many great 80s stuff that I just love. And I think the cast for that movie is fantastic. And I watched the movie before I read the book. So that could be one of the reasons why. But I went back and read the book and I was like, there are quotes that are really popular that people use and reference a lot that come from completely different characters and are put in a completely different situation. There's all these extra things that just weren't necessary. And so I think Rob Reiner as a director did a really good job of taking all the content in the book and putting it into a nice cohesive adaptation that was fun and whimsical and lighthearted. But I know that movie bombed originally. It did not do well. It wasn't until it did terribly in the box office. And it wasn't really until it got released onto VHS and people started to share it with their families that it started to become really popular and really quoted. Okay. And this sort of little cult phenomenon.
Yeah, it became a classic through time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because people shared it with families and it became a family type film that a whole bunch of people loved. And then I guess my other answer, this isn't that good, but I sort of thought a little bit about it. The Fifth Wave adaptation, it's not I'm gonna say this, I never finished the series, but I think for me, one of the reasons why I enjoyed watching that adaptation is the books are weird because you have no idea whose point of view you're reading. It's never specified at all. There's a whole bunch of different point of views, but it's never specified which character it's from. You can't tell because it's one thing to do multiple perspective novels and maybe you don't make it obvious, you don't have the character's name at the top of the page. I know Cassandra Clare has multiple perspectives in her novels, but it's obvious who you're reading from right away as you transition from perspective to perspective because it's written in third person. But I think these books were written in first person in transition from different perspectives and you could never tell. So the movie didn't have that issue because you're just seeing the characters on screen and seeing the plot happen in front of you.
Yeah.
And it just that was one of the reasons why I never finished that series and I thought that series was terrible. But I had fun watching the movie because it was just easier to consume. Doesn't mean it was necessarily good, but just more accessible. So that sort of popped into my mind and I was like, yeah, works. But there's a lot of really terrible YA adaptations out there that are
for sure. You know what's funny? I have a whole unpopular opinion though, because like I love the Twilight movies and I know a lot of people hated them. And like, the reason I'm gonna say the reason I love them is because like, so the first movie they barely had a budget. So if you think about it, the movie came out pretty well considering that the book actually had quite a lot of detail, and I think they grasped, the teenage angst and Edward being all Edwardy. So, but like the rest of the movies, they progressively got better, like visual wise and stuff. And I still remember like one of the best experiences in a movie theater was that we all went to watch the last movie. And there was this one scene where like, because we hadn't read the book in a while, because the movie came out a little bit after the book, we had forgotten that the scene wasn't actually real, that the person was kind of imagining that scene and that it hadn't really happened. And everybody in the movie theater gasped together when it happened because we thought it was real. And then when it came back to the present where it wasn't happening, everybody like heaved out a sigh of like relief. And I was like, yep, all these people read the book. So it was pretty excellent. So I enjoyed them, and I kind of rewatched them not that long ago because I saw them on Netflix and I was like, why not? I don't even remember the plot anymore. And I genuinely enjoyed them for a second time. So,
Fun. Cool. Well, that was the Unpopular Opinions book tag.
That was fun.
So, yeah, that was fun. I feel like one of the things that I like learned from this is that we all have very, very different reading tastes.
Yeah.
And so I feel like we talked about a lot of like different books and series. I mean, I feel like we all don't like Sarah J. Maas. I think that was also another conclusion that was reached. But I feel like that's like, like that's a common thing now. So I'm not too surprised. So this was fun. So I guess now we're going to transition, instead of talking about books that we don't like and unpopular opinions, talk about some series that we do enjoy, maybe ones that we think deserve more appreciation.
Yay!
Why we like them, what we look for in books that we read.
Okay, so let me see. I'm gonna just maybe I have like 3 of them. So like I mentioned before, we said The Dark on Fire is a fantasy. It's FF. It has a lot of social commentary on immigration, but like the cool thing about it is that they took immigration and blew it up so hard, like in a sense that they put it all up in your face where like you can't escape it because it's such an exaggerated version of immigration issues that it makes it dystopian, but it also feels incredibly relevant to right now. And the female characters, the FF romance is like slow burn, but it's not the main plot, but like you're still rooting for it, kind of thing. So I really enjoyed that. It's a duology, so not too much commitment. I'll actually be interviewing the author soon, so I'll be reading the second book. And so then the other one was Sound of Stars. That's like a A-spec demisexual non-binary kind of sci-fi. And I really enjoyed it because there's no insta love because the characters are demisexual, so none of that. And also just the sci-fi world was very well built. It focuses on music and books and how that influences how you see the world and stuff. And how that also controls how humanity thinks, like our consumption of media. So that's really cool. And I guess the third one that I was thinking about and kind of just escaped me for a moment because I can't remember. I don't know. Can't remember the third one. But I guess the third kind of book that I'm into really right now is reading Own Voices books. And I think in particular of my culture, so like I'm Latinx, so I've really enjoyed reading this like kind of seemingly an explosion of books that's recently coming out with Latinx culture and authors of Own Voices writing about their own experiences. And so like I've been reading Ghost Squad by Claribel Ortega, which is kind of like a ghost, creepy, middle grade Dominican folklore novel. And like I've definitely been enjoying seeing myself in books. I think I can really see why diverse readers want more books to come into the like medium that they can identify with, because it definitely hits a whole different button when you can relate to the character in that kind of way. So yeah, that's all I got.
Okay. So, I don't even know where to start. I have so many books that I love.
I know. I was like, let me pick 3.
Okay, let's start with Orcs and Crake by Margaret Atwood.
Ooh.
I love Margaret Atwood.
So she's a Canadian author. She's from Ontario, and I'm also from Ontario.
Yeah.
So I was starting to get into her, especially in high school, when we were reading about her and talking about her and doing kind of a project on her. And that's when I first read Orcs and Crake. And it was a book that kind of horrified me.
Oh.
She's a very intense author. She
Yeah.
will go over like any topic. I think she's respectful of it, but it's also very in your face.
Have
Like
you
one of
read
the
The Handmaid's
things.
Tale?
Yeah. Orcs and Crake is like much worse than that though.
Whew.
So in Orcs and Crake, there's a scene where a child was sexually assaulted, and I just wasn't expecting for it to come. So there's a lot of triggers in this book, definitely, but I think it was done very respectfully, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole dystopian series. It's also very sci-fi. It's all over the place. It's one of the best things I've ever read, to be honest.
Mm.
Next one, which I talk about like every single video that I make, is probably Full Metal Alchemist.
Oh yeah.
I've heard. I think I've watched the show, right?
Which one?
Yeah, there's
I don't know. I'm sure I've watched one of them. I'm familiar
Okay,
with it.
so
but, yeah.
there's the original Full Metal Alchemist, and then there's Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Brotherhood. Yeah.
The first one is crap. The second one it follows more of the storyline, and it's just more hard-hitting to me. I feel like the first one, in its defense, the manga wasn't done yet, so that's why it didn't follow the storyline. And it shows.
And it shows.
Okay, and then let's do last one. Let's see. I'm going to say one that I've probably never heard anybody talk about, and it's called The Opposite of Loneliness by Marina Keegan.
I've heard about it, but never read it.
Okay, that sounds good. I didn't know anybody else had heard of it. Okay, we're good here. So, what I like about this, it's from the perspective of a university student. She goes to Harvard, I believe, and she wrote some short stories and some poetry and things like that, and she passed away. And her family and her friends kind of published her book, and I think one of the best stories in it is called The Opposite of Loneliness, and it's just her experience going to school and having friends, and then not having a word for the opposite of loneliness.
Oh.
Yeah, it's very beautiful. So in case you guys couldn't tell, I am obsessed with fantasy. I love sci-fi. I love all these kinds of different elements coming together. But I also like things that deal with real world issues. Like I'm very interested in mental illness, and I'm very interested in family aspects.
Nice.
Yes.
Same. I like those kind of books.
For me, there is one series that I keep recommending to anyone, and this is the Wayward Children series by Shannon Maguire.
Ooh, okay, I've been meaning to read that series forever.
Right.
I don't know how many
That's
times
just put you
I've
on it.
reread that series. It's so far we have 5 books, but they're 150 pages long. So you can
so they're
easily,
short. Okay.
yeah, they're very short. You can find the audiobooks on Script, 3 hours long. So it's really nothing. And it has to do with kids coming back from magical world such as Narnia, Wonderland, etc., etc. And they have to learn to live in the real world again, but they don't want to. All they want is to go back there. And I cannot say that I relate to those books or whatever, but I'm a fan of Narnia. And whenever I was playing games, etc., when I was a kid, it was in a magical world. So we were imagining ourselves somewhere else with superpower, etc. And this is like people coming from our world, but going through a portal and ending up where they're meant to be. So I really love those books, and they deal with a lot of stuff. And you have ace characters, etc., which I really love. She doesn't go deep into details, but they're there. And they're not like there just to be there. There is a meaning behind that. But I really love that series. It's short, 5 books. The covers are to die for. So, yeah.
I can see Gabby studying, listening to these audiobooks in the next week.
Yeah, like I've been meaning to start that series for so long because I've heard so many good things about them. And I think now, because I've been using Overdrive a little bit more, like I'm so tempted to pick those up. Like I feel like it's about time.
Cribbit is free now, so like go use it.
Yeah, they're really good. I really recommend it to anyone, even if you're not into fantasy. They're really short, so you don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, you can have 2 hours. In 2 hours, it's read. So, I mean, each book. But yeah, and there is something else I'm really into is any kind of Anastasia's retelling. So the Romanov, I'm really into those books. And the last one I've read is actually Romanov by Nadine Brandes. And
I haven't read it yet.
Well, I didn't know what genre it was exactly because it is sold to be a fantasy, but it's actually a historical fantasy. So the first half of the book, you're going to read it and you're going to have the impression that you're actually reading the true story, what actually really happened. And at one point, there's going to be a twist and the magic is going to come in. And it's just like, I was eating that book. Like, I love that. Yeah.
I'm going to have to read it because I have it. And it's not that long of a book, actually, when you look at it. So I'm like, I'm going to have to give that a try then.
To throw a recommendation out there, it is a duology, but I think the books go kind of quickly. Heart of Iron by Ashley Poston.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You read it. You have read it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because it's Anastasia in space for those who aren't familiar with it, and it's really fun. It's a good time. I was hopeful if you had read it, but I figured I would throw it out there in case you hadn't. It's good. It's fun.
It's amazing. And that team, that piracy kind of thing, I wanted to be a part of that team. Like, they were just amazing.
They're such fun characters. I love her and her books so much. They're just so fantastic and so fun.
Yeah, I agree.
I guess for me, 3 series that I really, really love, they're all like very different from each other. Because like this is a series that I feel like I grew up with because I started reading it in like 8th grade, the Shadowhunter Chronicles. I know a lot of people have problems with them, and I feel like there's going to become some point when I will grow out of them. But I think I love that series so much just because it is so expansive. And I look at worlds like Harry Potter, where it's like that was 7 books. And we look back at that and it's like there's so many issues with it, and Cursed Child happened and there's so many issues with that. And it feels like the more information we find out, the more problematic it becomes, where I feel like Cassie is able to continually keep building upon that world. And there's so many new things that you find out that it's always fun to read. Even if they may not be like the most well-written books in the world, I think the characters that she creates are interesting. She has lots of different relationship dynamics that are interesting. And you always leave the end of the book like wanting more, at least for me, like I do, because I just have fun reading them. And I think it's because like they've just always been there, and they've been books that have like been there with me from like 8th grade throughout all of high school, now like into my college years, that it's fun to like get that new book. And there's also so many people who like on Booktube are excited about it and post reviews. Like I just have fun reading them, and like I enjoy them, even if like I know there's lots of people that are starting to be like there's these aspects that are problematic of it. And I think that's where you can kind of get into, and I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but it's something I've talked about, had conversations about a little bit, is like separating the art from the artist. So like at what point can or can't you do that? And so for me, I feel like,
I think the way you see it is valid, because it's like the people who grew up with Harry Potter, right? Clearly nowadays we know that the author herself has some problems and the books have some problems. But if you grew up with Harry Potter and you were like 10, 11, 12 years old, like Harry, when you read it, then you have a connection to that book because you felt like that kid, or you wanted to be that kid.
Yeah.
So in your case, that was Shadowhunter Chronicles. So for you, that's your book and you grew up with it. So yeah, it could have problematic issues, and maybe the author now is making some questionable choices. I'm not really sure. It's still, I say it's a matter of respecting people's opinion of it. You obviously love the books because you grew up with them. So like, I don't feel like readers should be, harassed for loving a book by a problematic author. Just because like there's so much history behind that. So like we could admit that an author is being problematic. We don't have to attack the people who read them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Because I feel like that's a big thing with Sarah J. Maas books too, is it's like become this thing where it's like a very heated battle, because it's either you don't like the books or you do like them, and then the people who do like them, it's like, why do you like those books? What's wrong with you? Like, they're so problematic. Like, the word mayonnaise is thrown around a lot. Like,
The word
it's
mayonnaise.
yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't remember who started that, but I feel like someone described their books as like a jar of mayonnaise, and I was like, that's interesting. I was like, that's funny. That was something that stuck with me for whatever reason. But yeah, I think like there was a video that I watched recently, I think from Caleb at the Insane Reader, where he talked about the Shadowwinter Chronicles, and he like loved those books, and then was like, I did some thinking, and now I feel like I've grown out of them, and I feel like I may reach that at like some point, but like I'm still having fun with them, and like the series, the entire like Chronicles is almost wrapped up. Like, it'll probably be wrapped up by the end of the decade, I would assume. So it's, yeah, I mean, it's going to always probably be a favorite of mine. And it's not like the books themselves that are problematic, because there's a lot of diverse characters and interesting relationships that are brought up, but maybe the author herself and some of the choices that she's made. And I think a lot of that has also come into play with like the adaptations of those books that have happened, and how like there's a whole bunch of new people that have been introduced to that sort of like waged a war between like people who are fans of the television show and people who are fans of the books. And that was a mess, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah, I think part of the issue with this is like, what exactly are they doing that's problematic? Like, are they, I don't know, saying things that aren't very nice? Are they being like homophobic or things like that?
Yeah.
I guess my view on this is maybe they're saying things that aren't so great, but it's not really directly hurting anybody.
Right.
But I feel like if there's an author that I love, that I recommended the book to Natalia here. Natalia, sorry?
Natalia. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that's Marion Zimmer Bradley. I think she's an excellent author, but she was very abusive to her children and her husband. So she was not a great person, and she directly hurt people. So I would not want, I think she's dead now, but that's not the point. The point is, I would not want to support her as an author, but I feel like little petty things like what Cassandra Clare has done, she's not a very nice person, but she's not hurting anybody. And I think that's the difference there.
And I think a large part of it is because she's had a lot of hate come her way because of the like TV show adaptation. Like, I remember like at BookCon in 2017, it was like, we're going to have extra security surrounding her, because I think there was like a threat on her life, because that was around the time that the Shadowwinter show came out. Like, I remember that being a thing and a whole bunch of people hating on her. I know there was like conversations about incest and like plagiarism and different things. And I was like, I feel like she, at least like the times that I've met her, has always been really nice and sweet to me. And most people that are like fans of her books have had good experiences with her. But I feel like it's like, if you're not a fan of her, that's maybe where like there's some gray lines. But yeah,
I think I agree with what Kayla was saying. Like, for example, I don't know if y'all heard about this mess, because it was a Latinx issue. But American Dirt, the author who wrote American Dirt, I don't remember.
I heard about that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't remember her name. So like, that's one of those really, really gray lines where you separate the author from the work, and you kind of can't, just because, like, you know, the author themselves claimed an identity that they normally didn't identify with right before they wrote the book. And then they wrote the book and also didn't research it properly. So it was full of problematic things that like directly affect the community they wrote about. And so like Kayla was saying, it is hurting people the way she's writing her book. So I think that, like Kayla was saying, it's very different if like you include something in the book that may not be the best message, versus like fully supporting your book with something that you've seen plenty people that you've written about say, you know, this is not a good message to be putting out there. So like, yeah, it's a book by book basis. I definitely don't encourage the cancel culture that we have going on sometimes, when we're like, oh, you know, it's kind of like everybody should take their own perspective on it. I think even if you decide to read books like that, you should keep those comments in mind, so you can like kind of like look through them and examine that as you're reading the book, and not just be like, well, I'll make my own opinion of it, because clearly somebody's pointed out that it's problematic for a group of people. So, but yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone's getting hate at some point.
I
Like
think
the book I'm reading, Blood
Are you
Hair,
reading?
so the Anastasia retelling, she sent out the arcs and she had to take them back because everyone was complaining about them because
like
of
I
some
remember
slave
that.
details. Yeah, some slave details were not adding up or whatever, didn't make any sense, or people didn't actually appreciate or didn't see the point, etc. I'm in the middle of the book. I don't see anything wrong with it. So, but she had to take all the arcs back and to reread them and to rework on them and to republish the arcs, etc., etc. So, I feel like everyone's gonna get some hate at
And
this
I think, to
point.
be fair, it depends who that complaint came from, right? Because if it was coming from like the people who slavery affected, right, and they're like, oh, this is not a good representation, or it's showing us in a bad light, or any of the above, it is right. I mean, if pulling the arts is a lot, but if the comments were so much so that it was gonna affect the way the book was perceived, then she obviously worked really hard on it, I assume.
Yeah.
She wouldn't want her book pulled down by that if it's something that she could fix. So I respect the fact that she pulled them back
Yeah.
based on reader feedback. But yeah, it's again, it's a perspective thing. I can see, for example, in American Dirt, how people who have no experience with, or not a lot of experience with people of color, can see like, oh, this book was exciting and on edge. And you know what? I think the thing that messed me up the most about that book, because I did get an early audiobook arc of American Dirt, and I was on like chapter 6 when all this controversy started coming out, is that the narrator for American Dirt is actually Hispanic. And when she's reading the story to you, it does sound real. So if you're listening to the audiobook, you could feel like, oh, this is a woman telling me her own story. So I get how the perception from like reading the actual book versus like listening to it could have also been a problem, because until I started hearing the controversy, I hadn't really noticed it myself, like, because somebody like that speaks Spanish is reading it to me, and they're reading it properly and it sounds great and stuff. So I was very hesitant to accuse people of certain things. So I'm just like, each to their own, but just keep in mind that it does have problematic elements towards the community, kind of thing. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I think like Gabby was saying before, a lot of people do read for just enjoyment. So,
So they ignore those facts as well.
Yeah, the issue that might be there is that they're not being critical. As you see on Booktube, you tend to be more critical because you are reviewing these books, you're looking through the world building, the characters, and all the different aspects. So I guess it's easy for some people to get lost in the book and not remember, especially let's say from my point of view, I am Caucasian. This is very obvious how pale I am. I'm not going to understand certain perspectives from people of color, for example. So if somebody tells me, hey, this is problematic, this is something that is personally very hurtful, this is very hurtful to the people of color, then I'm like, okay, I didn't realize that, let's discuss it, let's try to do something about it, right?
Absolutely.
But I can understand why people would not clue in, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think I should clarify, when like reading for entertainment, like I think like maybe because I still I've taken like lots of AP Lit classes, like I consider myself a critical reader, but I feel like maybe I don't like review books as harshly. Like maybe I'm not the type of person to give out like 2-3 star reviews unless a book is like really bad, or like 1-star reviews. And I think a large part of that is because I'm like selectively picking out books that I've heard lots of good things about, that I know that I'm going to like. And so I'm like not searching out those books that I feel like I'm not going to like,
True,
so it just sort of like makes
yeah.
sense that I'm going to be reading books that I would like rate higher because of, I guess, like what I'm choosing to read. But yeah, I felt like I just wanted to clarify that because I'm like, I don't want to like.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Like my dad had this ongoing joke when I first started my like Bookstagram and stuff like that, and he'd always joke that I always rated my books 4 and 5, that I rarely ever rated a book 3 or lower. And And he's like, you're not being a critical reviewer because you're always rating 4 and 5. So people are just always going to think that you think books are good. And I was like, no, it's just that I don't purposely pick books that I don't feel like I'm going to enjoy. If it ends up being a 3, it's because I picked up a book I thought I would really like, and then I was disappointed by it, or it had some issues with it that I didn't like particularly enjoy. So I totally like don't like really look at how often people rate books 4 and 5, because like you wouldn't want to pick up a book that you would think you wouldn't like. And I know some people's channels are based on that, so nothing against them, you know.
Yeah.
They pick controversial books so they can see if they like them or not. But I think it's very common to rate books higher because you're probably picking books that you're definitely interested in. So I mean, that's, I don't see the problem with that.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah,
because I know like that was a thing that was big on Booktube too a while back, was like star ratings, and I think a lot of that is also Goodreads too as a platform in the way that it's set up, because you can't get half-star ratings, so sometimes like your star rating can be deceiving. So
yes, I find in my experience that I'm not afraid to like give a book 1 star.
Yeah,
I've done that with a few books. Don't hate me too much for this, Natalia, but I gave Origin 1 star because I thought it was awful.
No, and that's fair. You know what? And like Gabby mentioned before with Shadowhunter Chronicles. So Dan Brown is an author that I've been reading since like maybe late high school.
There's that nostalgia there.
Yeah, when like Da Vinci Code came out, and I've loved all of his books, even the ones outside of the series that are also well written. I think I was invested in the series as a whole, and it's the ending of the series. So I was like, oh, this is great. You know, it's circling all the stories back together. So I think it's part of that. I wasn't critically reading that book. I was reading that book because like, yes, it's the end of a series, you know. So I can see how other people didn't enjoy it. I was also in China, and I was super excited to get the book in my Kindle because it's very hard to get English books in China. And so I was just hyped to read it. So like I got through it in a day, and I really like, you know, I enjoyed the world that he brought in. But yeah, no, I'm actually a fan of hearing people with opposing opinions of books that I love, and I actually seek them out on Instagram sometimes.
Definitely. I actually really love that.
I love that because I want to know like what don't you like? And you know, Wilder Girls was one of those. Like so many people I follow think that book is God tier, and I'm out here like,
no.
So and I seek them out because I want to know why they think it's so good, you know. Like I'm always interested in other people's views, and I'll watch the videos for people who like absolutely loved the book I hated or something. So yeah.
It's good.
That's what I love about Booktube or Bookstagram, whatever. You have different types of people. You have people who can talk about books they hated or they loved, and the other person had an opposite opinion or whatever, and they can just talk about it. And then you have people who didn't like a book, and that means for them that it was a bad book, and you are not allowed to actually like it. That just doesn't make
I feel
sense.
like hopefully that's the minority, because I feel like a lot of booktubers are like, at least especially when they do this tag or tags like similar to it, if we're talking about like the unpopular opinions tag, it's like disclaimer, just because I don't like these books doesn't mean that this is a personal attack on you for liking them. And I feel like we have to do that so much on Booktube when we make those types of videos, and I feel like it should just be like implied, you know. Like I kind of just wish that could be more of the norm, where it's like, I'm going to do this because this is me just talking about some stuff that maybe I'm not that interested in, or books that I really love that other people don't like. But that doesn't mean like we should all be allowed and entitled to have our own opinions. It shouldn't be like a war.
You check on Goodreads. Like last week, I filmed a video and I was reading reviews, very bad reviews of my favorite books. When I saw some comments, I cried because it was just mean to be mean. Like, like I love bad comments because it made me think, oh yes, he's right, but I did enjoy it because blah, blah, blah. So I can kind of get more critical after or whatever, or simply see another point of view. But when you're just mean and you just want to trash a book because you want to trash a book, then
yeah, I think I had that problem with, I read The Memory Thief, and I forget the author off the top of my head right now. And I loved it. I gave it a 5-star. It was my first read of the year. It's like a fantasy. And so I laughed because I went on Goodreads to know what genre it was, because I wanted to put it in my my Bujo. And all of a sudden I realized that people disliked it like across the board. It was hilarious. And I just laughed out loud because like so many of the first reviews, DNF, 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 like people hadn't even finished it. And then so like I went through the reviews and I was like, all right, let me read the reviews and see like why people didn't like it, because maybe I missed something or I didn't notice. And then after reading them, I still came to the conclusion that like I didn't agree with their reviews. And so like just because like it wasn't a content problem, it was an info dumping problem. And I'm like, I'm the queen of hating info dumping. So like something was happening here. But then again, I did acknowledge that this was the first book I ever annotated because I wanted to try it out. So I did experience this book differently because I wrote down my questions. I annotated what I found interesting. And it happened to be that the author, like the Norse mythology by Neil Gaiman, in the back had references to the different styles of magic and which kind of people used it and stuff. So I found that having that information, I didn't find the info dumping that bad because I read that first. And then I came back to read the book. So I was already familiar. And I wrote that in my review when I put it there. I was like, maybe I suggest that if you want to try this book because you like the concept, then maybe read the back first and then start the book. You know what I mean? And take notes, write down what you have questions about, because I literally got to the end and she'd answered every single question I had in the book at some point, even down to like the most stupid detail that I wanted to know from the beginning. So she did cover her bases. But yeah, no, there were people who hated it. And I was like, oh, I didn't know.
Because I think that's a trend on Goodreads too that has happened, where like people will like give a book like a 1-star review before it even comes out.
Yeah.
And that's happened.
And I'm like, that's terrible.
Like again, these are things that I feel like we as a community should all entirely be condoning, but I feel like they still happen anyway. And that's what I find really weird, because it's like maybe these are people who just use Goodreads and maybe aren't like, like they're not a part of the community. And so, but like we as a community recognize that's happening and we're like, whoa, like that's not good, because
I feel like if you're going to give it a 1-star review, it should come with an explanation. Like I want to know why you gave it a 1. I feel like if you give a 3, 4, and 5, all right, if you don't write a review, but I'm like a 2 and a 1. I want to know, like, did you hate it? Was it dumping info on you? Was it problematic? So I want to know why I have to avoid it, So I guess that's my personal point of view. Like if I rate a book low, you're going to have something on there because I'm going to tell you about it.
Right.
Yes, so, it's easier to write a bad review than
yes, it is.
A good one.
I hate getting to the end of a good book and then being like, I have no words.
Yeah, speechless.
Like, what are you speechless about? Let us know.
Yeah, but I would like to, but then I'm like, am I just gonna rant? And like, I had this running joke with my friend that I was gonna take the notes that I take as I'm reading and just publish them, like just make them public. Like this is what I was thinking as I read the book. Because it would be the most accurate reaction of what was going through my mind. But yeah, no, I definitely need to work on like being able to concise my excited reviews. But that's why I like YouTube book reviews as well too, because you can just rant. You can be like, it was just awesome. All right. Like I have no words for it, but when you're trying to write it, you can't just say that.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a big problem.
Yeah.
I find on the other end that I've been told I'm a very critical reader and I like hate everything and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't hate everything. There's it's going back to this like problematic thing where it's like if something's triggering me and it's not done well, I would give it a less star just for that.
Yeah. I think in my case, like, when it comes to ratings, like I find that, and when watching YouTube videos, which a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're not critical enough, or like that kind of thing. I do have YouTubers that I watch for the sake of the fact that they're very critical about their reads, like Bow Ties and Books, Read with Cindy. Like they're very specific about world building and everything. But like, I'm not that kind of reviewer. Like I will address what I liked and didn't like about the book or what my favorite parts were. But like, I don't know if it's like I don't feel like I have the vocabulary for it to elaborate the way they do. I mean, I feel like they sound like they know the whole book world when they talk about books, which is impressive. But I don't feel like that's me. So I just genuinely give my impression of the book, whether it was good or bad. So like I kind of hate that expectation of YouTube as well, where people want you to like dissect the book or something. And I'm like, well, some of us are good at that. And some of us, like for example, Gabby, sometimes don't even bother to read like that because we read for fun. And so it's
Yeah.
like, we don't want to go that in depth to find things or to notice things. So like I feel like every channel has their own magic because of that. Like everybody has a different
Yeah, I like how you said
style,
that. It has their
aesthetic,
own
and
magic.
discussion. Yeah, it does. I
Yeah.
follow different YouTubers, like booktubers, for very different reasons. Like I had this ongoing joke with a friend of mine that I follow Rachel Ray Reads, like Rachel Marie's Reading Corner, and I do not read books that she reads ever. Like there's very hardly ever a book they read that I've actually read. But I just love hearing them talk about books. Like
Yeah.
they're so calming and they're so knowledgeable and they make me feel excited about the book, even though I probably won't ever read it. But I'm like, wow, it really sounds like she enjoyed it. So yeah, it depends. Like, I have plenty of booktubers that I'm like, I'll never read what you read, but I like your channel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same.
I can see that.
Yeah. So
Okay, cool. So is there any final thoughts you guys want to add before we wrap up? Anything maybe you want to plug, stuff you're doing?
Well, I'll plug one. So the Social Distance Book Fest is happening on April 25th, 2020. It's starting at 10 a.m. all the way till 10 p.m. And we have a whole bunch of awesome authors, YA, adult, horror, contemporary, fantasy, all the things, Sasha. And yeah, so it's happening all live on YouTube on people's different channels. So you can follow us at Socidis Book Fest. And yeah, we've been posting about the panels and the times and everything, and we'll have a full schedule up soon on there just for you to mark your calendars.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I did like a readathon a couple weeks ago, and it killed me. So I'm not going to do any more.
No.
It was a 24-hour readathon, so I stayed up for about 22 hours, and then I crashed.
Oh my god!
I tried so hard.
This was not a readathon. It's just
not? Okay.
No. It's just the
Oh my
authors,
God.
like as if you were at BookCon and you go to like a topic panel to hear the authors talk about their books, kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like panels. It's not a readathon.
Okay, I'd be much more interested in that then.
Yes.
Readathons kill me.
Yeah, no, readathons, I've tried and I always fail. I think I'm just bad at keeping a TBR because I'm a mood reader. So yeah, I can't do readathons.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of the owls. I don't know if you heard about that.
Yes, I've heard about them.
yes.
Everybody and their mother is in the middle of the owls.
Yeah, this is
I
the
don't know
third
much
time.
about it though. Like I know that it's like Harry Potter based, and I wasn't very into Harry Potter, so I guess I wasn't into that hyped stuff.
Yeah,
So if you
a
guys
lot of-
like have videos and stuff on it, like totally link them to me. I would love to see like what this is all about.
we're just sitting our owls, which are exams during their 5th year in Hogwarts at Hogwarts.
Okay.
So we just have like 12 subjects. So you just need to go under a Book Rose channel, and she actually created the readathon. So you have in April the owls, you have in August the newts. So in in April you have to pick a career. So for instance, I picked Trader of Magical Tomes, and for that I need to pass 4 exams. So I have like charms, I have divination, and blah 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 blah. And you just need to read those books for those specific courses and prompts, etc. And then in August you continue with this. So it's, I guess a lot of people are not into Harry Potter, but they're still doing it because it's just fun.
Yeah, because
and
it's just prompt based. Like it's not Harry Potter book based.
No,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Like for instance, for charms, you have to read a book with a white cover. For history of magic, you have to read a book with some kind of witch in the book or whatever. Then you have books for astronomy. You're gonna read a book at night, so it could be any genre, etc. So it's just, yeah, I guess you can be scared or you don't want to read it if you're not into Harry Potter, but you don't have to be into Harry Potter. For instance, I'm going to host co-host a first readathon in June, which is based on Percy Jackson. I haven't read that series, but I'm going to be a co-host. So,
Okay.
That's fun.
so yeah, but it's amazing. Like the community is going crazy around it. So many buddy reads left and right. So it's all about that, like reading all together. And we have sprints together. We have like, I don't know, so many things going on Twitter. So it's just fun.
Yeah. And like similar to that, if you don't like readathons, like the hashtag Consabor Reading Challenge is to read more Latinx books during the year. And it's just throughout the year. How many ever Latinx books you manage to read throughout the year, that's the challenge. Like you read as many as you want. And it's the same thing. You know, we host buddy reads every 2 weeks of a specific book, but you don't have to participate. It's just to encourage people that want to read together. And then the rest of the time you just read Latinx books. That's it. Which
Okay.
works for me because I just pick a Latinx books I'm in the mood to read, and that's it.
Yeah. I like that there's like not that pressure. That kind of helps.
Yeah, I like that.
About readathons, that it's very like pressure based, even if
yes,
it's
like they're like during this month you got to read 8 prompts. I'm like, not gonna happen.
No.
All right, Gabby, it's your turn.
Just sorry, just
All right. Hi.
yeah.
No, you're good.
I'm on a live show right now. Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to try to keep doing more of these. So if you are a booktuber, if you are a creator who wants to join, I'm going to try to keep doing this for as long as we're all locked up and have more of these conversations. I'm trying to do a themed one for the Shadowhunter Chronicles that I'm working on putting together. I love just having like more people on and just sort of having it be more fun and talky like as we go. So if you are interested in joining, please message me on Twitter. Like I would love to have you to just talk and hang out and entertain the masses.
We need that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I'll message you about that because I've read the entire Shadowhunter Chronicles, so I can definitely host if you have any more spots.
Yeah, I would love to have you. So I will add you to the group of people that I have already who seemed interested, and we can work on planning that because that'll be fun. So yeah, thank you all so much for joining and for watching, and thank you all so much, my lovely guests, for being here and chatting with me today. I had lots of fun getting to hear about you and all your bookish opinions. All of their channels are also linked down below in the description, so you should go and check them out, subscribe to them. And then remember to support indie bookstores. That's sort of like the big message and theme that I want going on throughout all of this, because there's a lot of independent bookstores everywhere that need your support. So if you guys actually want to afterwards send me a link to maybe an independent bookstore near you that you really like, or maybe one that maybe isn't near you, but one that you like frequent or know really well that you think deserves some support or some people should like shout at, let me know and I'll add the link to that bookstore in the description.
Yeah, I'm going to try to find one because, all the books I read are in English and there is no English bookstore here. So I'm going to try that.
Yeah. But anyway, on that note, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time for the next episode of Booktube Live.